بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين العبد المعيد الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداءهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا وإن الله لمع المحسنين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد Alone with the alone, examining our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been our topic. Tonight's is lecture number 11. We have now, from day number 1, attempted to establish, revive, revisit, reintroduce Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into our world. We've tried to build a base of Tawheed, understanding our Creator, understanding every other avenue of Aqidah and belief that exists in our world rests on the base of Tawheed. And we have, from day number 1, our premise has always been the idea that if the base of your building is shaky, everything else will also be shaky as well. The moment your base is strong and mazboot, everything else equally becomes that much more stronger. Now, we've talked about in the past few days, we talked about the idea of achieving that level of subservience to Allah, where we submit to Him wholeheartedly, not just worship Him. And sometimes the best avenue to do that is through hardships and struggles. We talked about mercy, and for the past 2 nights, we've been talking about those principles or those blockages that sometimes avoid us from allowing this phenomenon to happen. So whether it's shaitan we talked about 2 nights ago, or whether it's the dunya we talked about yesterday, the love of this dunya, and that dunya that's mal'oon in the eyes of Allah. We made a very clear distinction yesterday between the 2 dunyas. I want to again explore this idea that tonight there are avenues that block our path. All of us in this room wish to be the Ahl Tawheed. We want to be the idea where Allah is our base. We wish to have this idea where Allah is in every single one of our decisions. But the reality is that خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا, man was created weak. And so we are easily distracted, easily swayed, easily pulled off the path that we wish to live on. And one such possible disease or difficulty is a disease of ghaflat. And I want to spend tonight talking a little bit about ghaflat. It's one of the most detrimental diseases that all of us are infected with. We just simply don't know it sometimes. Now, what is ghaflat? What's the translation for it? There's been many English words that have been translated, but as I've been saying, it doesn't capture the essence of the word. Heedlessness, neglect, giving something or not giving something its due importance, taking things very casually, those are all things that are not considered to be ghaflat. A person who is inflicted is someone who's ghafil. Now, we'll first establish the Quranic approach. We'll talk about solutions We'll talk about the effect, and we'll close out this discussion today, inshallah, by 8:05. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We started at 7:20, so you took my 5 minutes, I take your 5 minutes. Inshallah. First, the Quran, a couple of very scary and strong verses in the Quran that tell us where the position of those who are ghafil reside in the world of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, the symptoms of a person who is ghafil is something that you and I go through almost on a daily basis. We have these states of awakening sometimes where we are in tune with God. All of a sudden now we remember God. God becomes the focal point. And then there are moments where we neglect God. We forget God. We become heedless to Him. There are moments where we convince ourselves that starting from tomorrow now, I'm going to start being a better person. The night passes, you wake up and you forget that conversation you had with yourself. And there are moments where sometimes it triggers remembrance of God, sometimes it doesn't. Right? You're on a long flight, let's say somewhere, let's say going back to Pakistan, on a long flight from Sydney. Now you're watching your movie or whatever you're doing, and all of a sudden now a little bit of turbulence happens. Yeah. The plane starts to go up and down, up and down, up and down. And the more the plane goes down, the more your taqwa goes up, doesn't it? MashaAllah? Yeah. That's when the screen is off, and Ayatul Kursi, and Char Qul, and Dua Imam Zamana, and Dua Fajr, everything comes out until the pilot takes off the seatbelt sign, and then we press play again on the movie. This back and forth of us being awake, asleep, is known as ghafla. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. You're on a long flight, enjoy your movie, that's fine. But I'm saying this is some of the symptoms we have. We sit in a majlis, we sit with a very powerful speaker, we're very affected by that speaker. And while the speech is going on, we have convinced ourselves, you know what, I'm going to start implementing what he's talking about starting from tomorrow. We're excited, we're hyped up, we can't wait. This is exactly what I've been waiting for. But the moment we get to the car, we forget everything that was discussed. And the Quran talks about what? خَتَمَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ وَسَمْعِهِمْ وَأَبْصَارِهِمْ. After a while, when all this happens, Allah seals the hearts, seals the eyes, seals the ears. Now, no matter how much you tell them hidayat, 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 they're not moving from where they are. This affects all of us. Everybody in this room it affects. The person on the member, the person listening to the person on the member. Everyone is affected by ghaflat. And there are solutions for this, of course. But first understand the importance and the danger of this disease. It stops us from allowing Allah to be the focal point in our life. Now, Surah Al-Araf is one verse that is very, very open. It talks about the maqam or the negative level of someone who is ghafil. It's a verse I read for you in the last Jummah khutbah for those of you who are here for Friday prayers. The verse talks about those who are in the hellfire, those who are motivated Allah to create the hellfire. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَلَكَدْ ذَرَعْنَا لِجَهَنَّمَ مَنْ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ. From the majority of the jinn and the insan that are in the hellfire, they have three qualities. لَهُمْ قُلُوبًا لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ أَذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. Three qualities, three very dangerous qualities now. They have hearts, they don't allow anything to penetrate deep into the hearts. Everything is surface level. وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا. They have eyes, 20/20 vision, perfect vision. They look at everything perfectly, they don't see anything. وَلَهُمْ أَذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. Again, perfect hearing, everything is perfect. They're hearing everything, they're not listening to anything. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ. They are people like cattle. Cattle, you've seen cattle, right? They go where the herd goes. If one goes off the herd, the guy comes and hits it a few times and he goes back towards the herd. Wherever the herd goes, he goes. The herd goes left, he goes left. The herd goes right, he goes right. These are people just like that. They're going through the motions. Nothing going deep inside their heart. They don't see anything. Nothing. There's warning signs with their eyes. They are neglectful. There's warning signs with their ears. They're neglectful. Nothing affects these people. Bal hum adall. This is where it goes dangerous. They're actually worse than cattle. Ulaika humul ghafilun. They are the ones who have been diseased with ghaflats. Understanding this is very, very key for us to understand that we need to remove this from our path and begin to slowly but surely be active individuals who worship Allah. Because the reality is that when you are ghafil, shaitan distracts you, shaitan gets the best of you, shaitan convinces you that the amount that you do is good enough. And we become complacent. Spiritual complacency. Spiritual laziness. It's a whole bahas in the Quran. When the Quran talks about the munafiqeen, they say, إِذَا قَامُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ قَامُوا كُسَالًا. When they rise up for namaz, when they rise up for salat, they rise up as if they are lazy, as if they're doing God a favor. And they quickly but surely get through the salat and they move on with their life. Let's not be those who are spiritually complacent or lazy, God forbid. The trick is that we have a salat that we recite every single day. It's the exact same salat, the exact same words. We must keep our niyat fresh throughout all that. And that's a challenge, especially when we are people who are the people of habit and adat. Alaikum salam. So now all of a sudden now we're repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again. And our youth ask us a lot of times why. We have our hadith and it's on our fiqh. If you decide to recite something different from Surah Al-Hamd in the first two rakats, your salat is void, batil. You can't do it. You have to recite Surah Al-Hamd. So 10 times a day, we're reciting Surah Al-Hamd. Now our kids ask why can't there's 114 surahs in the Quran, why do we have to pick Surah Al-Hamd? The same thing over and over and over again. It gets boring, it gets repetitive, it gets redundant, it gets a little bit what? It gets complacent sometimes. And the example my Ustad gave me was a very nice one. I'll give you my example. I flew from Toronto to Vancouver to Sydney, Sydney to Melbourne. 1, 2, 3 flights. Now, when I first got onto Toronto, you know, they have a nice safety video for me. You've all flown, mashallah. You all know the safety video. They'll teach you, like you are a 2-year-old child, how to put on your seat belt, mashallah. They'll say, this is one part, go until you click. Lift the flap and your seatbelt is off. If the cabin pressure drops, the mask will come down. First put the mask on yourself, then your loved ones. Flotation device, you can swim on the ocean. Right? All these things are there. Okay, great. I land in Vancouver, get off the plane for an hour. I go back on the plane in Vancouver to fly towards Sydney. The exact same video. Seat belt, click, unclick. Flotation device, mask. I just saw the exact same video 5 hours ago. Then I fly from Sydney to Melbourne on Qantas Airlines or Qantas, whatever you call it. Again, the same video, seat belt, mask, everything. If I was to ever ask the stewardess or the pilot, I said, look, you know, I know how to put a seatbelt on with all due respect. I know when a mask comes down how to put on the mask. What I'm more interested in is what's the meal on the plane today. What I really want to know is what's your schedule of movies you have for today for me. What I want to know is, like, do you have any chocolate on the plane today? These are things that are important to me. They'll respond to me and say, Mr. Jafri, whether or not we feed you, whether or not there are movies, that's not vital for your survival. We tell you those things that are vital for your survival. Now, on a journey from Toronto to Melbourne, 3 different times I heard the exact same thing. And every single time they'll tell me why. It's vital for my survival. 10 times a day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ مَالِكِ يَوْمِ الدِّينِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. Why? That's vital for our survival in this world. We have to understand that. Now, it's our problem that we have simply become what? Lip service. Oh, wait a second now. This is a mi'raj for you. Take it easier for a moment. Understand what you're saying. That's why a lot of my youth, my adults ask me, that the moment that I say Allahu Akbar in my salat, 1,000 thoughts enter my mind, and every thought is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My mortgage, my bills, my wife, my kids, my susral, they all come inside my brain. And the moment I'm done my salat, they all exit my brain. Ye kya baat hai bhai? Why does that happen? I don't understand. And while there's a whole discussion on that, you've heard that many times, I'm sure. One of the basic ways you can start by improving your focus is to know what you're saying in salat. Know what it means when we say, you alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. These small things that all of you know, all of us know, we apply them, we start to remove the layers of ghaflat from us. No longer is it complacency, no longer is it laziness. It's actually every single time, it's a mi'raj. And that's what we're after. Because if you look at some of the solutions the ulama have for the disease of ghaflat, there's a few of them I want to share with all of you tonight. These are secrets now of the Ahlul Bayt. One such solution is a salat called Salatul Ghufayla, that mashallah, a lot of you recite, alhamdulillah, a lot of you know. But there are some of you who may not know. So those of you who know, bear with me for a while I go through this. You see, the Ahlul Bayt have recognized, Allah has recognized, that when ghaflat takes place, and listen very carefully, it usually takes place at night. We become different at night. Our conversations at 12 noon and our conversations at 12 midnight are 2 different conversations. And those who are laughing and giggling are guilty of this right now. Where we go at 12 noon is different from where we go at 12 midnight. Our thoughts at noon are not our thoughts at midnight. Shaitan is not nearly as effective at noon as he is at midnight. The moment the sun sets, it's almost as if Shaitan all of a sudden has this power over us, and we become somebody who's weak. So long as the sun is up, we're okay. The moment that the sun is setting, it's a problem. And so what's the solution? Beautiful solution. The Ahlul Bayt say there is a salat between Maghrib and the Isha. A salat that is to be recited before you enter the night. Ghufayla comes from ghafala. It is an answer for those who are in this disease of ghaflat. It's a very short salat, 2 rakats between Maghrib and Isha. It's meant to be an armor for you, a protective gear for you. When you enter the night and Shaitan now attempts to pull you off the path, you have that ghufayla armor on top of you. The namaz is very simple. As many of you know, after Alhamd, there are 2 verses to be recited in the first rakat and the second rakat. You can Google it. Ayatul Al-Uzma Google has this salat on there. Rahmatullah alayhi. He has that salat on there. If you Google it, it'll tell you exactly how to do, what to do. They have PDFs, they have little cards you can put in your palm, everything. I would strongly suggest, those of you who wish to elevate and there's chains and anchors pulling you down, the basic bare minimum place to start is this salat. It'll take you 6 minutes. You can hold the phone in your hand while you recite it. The first rakat after Alhamd, they ask you to remember the story of Nabi Yunus. And the ayat is what? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. مَظُنُونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ الْمَغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ عَنَّا نَقْدَرَ عَلَيْهِ فَنَادَى فِي ظُلُمَاتٍ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ سُبْحَانَكَ إِنِّي كُنْتُ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْغَمِّ وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Let's dissect this verse a little bit. Before doing that, let's fill the gaps in the middle here, but with one salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. Thank you. Those on the wall, you're okay. You've earned the spot in the wall. You came early just for the wall. I wouldn't pull you off the wall, God forbid. I'm not that evil. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Nabi Yunus is that prophet very famously that spent time in the stomach of a whale or a mammal. All my kids know he's a fish prophet, as many of you called him. Now, khulasa, what happened, of course, is that Nabi Yunus, just like every other prophet, is sent to a village, a group, to introduce Allah, Tawheed, negate all of the idols, worship Allah. And many of the prophets before Rasulullah had been faced with a lot of resistance. He also did, but the capacity of those individuals during the time of Nabi Nuh, Nabi Ibrahim, or something else, Nabi Yunus was no different. He became a little bit impatient. What was better for him was to be patient with his people. Instead, he got a little bit patient and asked for the adab of Allah on these people. There's a whole discussion on tarki awla and guna and sin to the Prophet. I don't want to go down there. He didn't commit a sin, obviously. We believe in the ismat of the Prophet. He chose the lesser of the better act. That's all he did. That's not a sin. To teach him a little bit of a lesson now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked this whale now to engulf him. And some say 40 days, some say 40 years. These days aren't important. He was inside the stomach of the whale. Follow me as I present you the metaphorical discussion on this very famous story that all these kids know, mashallah. Now I want you to picture this, really understand why of all the stories in the Quran, why was this chosen in Namaz al-Ghufayla? Now you're the Prophet of Allah inside the belly of this beast. And this beast does not swim on the shores of the ocean. It swims in the deepest part of the ocean. Correct? Yeah. Sometimes it comes up for air and goes back down. So here we have a prophet of Allah, follow me now, in the darkest portion of the mammal, the stomach, and the mammal is in the darkest portion of the ocean. Dhulamat upon dhulamat, darkness upon darkness. In that state, in that halat now, as a prophet of God, he spent X amount of days now preaching to his people, believe in Allah, believe in Allah, believe in Allah. Allah now in turn does what? Tells him to spend time inside the stomach of the whale. If it was you and I, if it was me perhaps, we'd blame Allah. Say, Allah, look, I did my job. Why don't you punish them instead of putting me in the stomach of the whale, right? He doesn't do that. In that darkness upon darkness, the Quran says, فَنَادَى فِي ظُلِمَاتٍ. He called out in the darkness, إِنِّي كُنْتُ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. I was the one that did dhulm against myself. Many times when we hit rock bottom, and this story is all about darkness upon darkness, where we hit the darkest portion of our life, scratching rock bottom, we can get no deeper than this. We are as low as we can be. At that moment, the last person we think about is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last person we blame is ourselves. Instead, we search for people to blame. I'm in this predicament because of A, B, and C, not because of me. I'm the victim here, man. I'm not the cause. But this story says what? Nabi Yunus, a ma'soom prophet of Allah, in the darkness of the darkness, at that moment realizes I'm in this situation because of myself. And the Quran says that we heard his cry, Inni kuntu min al-zalimin. And then he glorifies Allah. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka. Glory be to you, there's no one but you. And the Quran says that we listened to him. وَنَجَّيْنَاهُمْ, we freed him. وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And we'll do the exact same thing for the believers. We'll do the exact same thing for the believers. Now you're entering the Salat of Isha and you recite this Salat. Where now you remember the story of Nabi Yunus. Where now if this ghaflat causes you to scratch rock bottom, at that moment the Quran is teaching us to do what? To remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To call upon Him. To acknowledge that this is my doing, no one else's. Okay, so practically speaking, if you have not interjected or injected Salatul Ghufayla inside of you, then do so if you can. Your life will change, I promise you. You do it sincerely. Number 2 is our a'mal. You know, we live in a society that has a very easy slogan. Go big or go home, they say. Right? I don't know about here, but in the US and Canada, it's go big or go home, meaning it's all about the wow factor. Even our weddings are the wow factor. To one up the person last week's wedding, this one will be one more wow on top of that. It's a wow factor. And we think that our worship has to be the wow factor as well. Blow God away. I read 10 pages of the Quran today. I read 3 or 4 du'as today. And the wow factor. The problem with the wow factor is you can't keep the wow factor up. You can't keep it up. If you start off up here, where are you going to go? Your next step is you're going to go down. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen says what Allah would prefer is not big ibadah done inconsistently. What He would prefer is small acts of worship done consistently. I remember, you know, it's amazing how when you actually begin to learn from an ustad, and if that ustad has learned from the right source, they'll present the deen of Islam to be so simple and so easy. You and I have made this deen so hard on ourselves. We'll go into a restaurant and we'll find out, okay, let's find out who the cook is and then who the cookers are. We'll go in the back in the kitchen, interview them. You know, what's your deen? What's your deen? Can you say the kalama? If I say salam, will you give me jawab? Then I'll think about eating here. That's not the case, man. The Muslim says it's halal, halal, bismillah, that's it. Well, us, we make the deen so hard for ourselves. My Ustad says, if you want to establish Salatul Layl in your life, Namaz al-Shab in our life, he says, it's too hard on your soul to wake up in the middle of the night, pray 11 rak'ats with that qunut and Salatul Witr, and expect you to keep that going. Maybe in the passion, the first 2 nights you're up and about and you're good, but that's not going to last very long. He says, instead what you do is you introduce that salat slowly to yourself, 2 rak'ats at a time. 2 rak'ats just before midnight and go to sleep. Do that for 40 days, he says. Can you imagine? For 40 days do that. After that, 2 rak'ats plus 2 more rak'ats. Slowly but surely do that. The Sharia of Islam didn't come from day number 1. The hurmat of alcohol came 15 years after Risalat. Allah knows us. We have to be very slowly introduce this idea of amal to us. And the idea is for us to constantly do the amal. We don't understand the importance of our amal sometimes. There's a hadith by our Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He says the mayyat goes to the qabristan and 3 things follow him. Ma'aluhu wa ahluhu wa amaluhu. The mayyat's wealth follows him, the mayyat's family follows him, the mayyat's a'mal follow him. When everything is done, talqeen is read, dafn is done, everything is done, two come back and one remain, the hadith says. His family comes back, his wealth comes back, his amal remain with him in the grave. And the reason why I harp on this idea of amal is because you'll be surprised. I'm not sure if this fitna has reached here or not. In the US and in Canada, this fitna of irfan or pseudo irfan or fake irfan has reached there, where now they are convincing our youth. There comes a time when you don't need to do amal anymore. If you've gotten to the point where you are fana fillah and baqa billah and you're flying towards Allah, you're up all night, you can see someone's barzakh, you can walk through walls, at that moment, there's no point for salat and no point for roza. Those were all steps to get you to this point. Now that you're there, forget it. So what do? We look for the quick routes towards Jannat. We skip steps. Whereas if you ask someone like Ayatollah Bahjat rahmatullah alayhi, he says if you want to achieve any level of irfan, two simple pieces of advice. Do what's wajib and don't do what's haram. That's it. So the idea is for us to do amal little bit at a time, but continue to do amal. Everything that we do is based on what we do. No one's going to ask you in your grave, I'm sorry, what your last name is, who your father was, what kind of business you or he had, let's say in Pakistan. No one's going to ask you how many kids you had. Everyone's going to ask you, what did you do in this world? You know, when I was preparing to come here for my 2 weeks of stay, I packed a suitcase. And I thought about everything, from my toothbrush, to my pajamas, to my abba and qaba, to my jeans, to my shoes, to my everything. I thought, you know what, for 2 weeks, let me make sure I have everything down packed. And I packed, everything was done. 2 days before my flight, zipped up at the door, ready to go. All this preparation for 2 weeks. A journey of eternity waits for us. Do we have any suitcase packed? Anything packed? When our wives are pregnant and it's approaching that time where they are a few weeks away, the doctor says what? Have a bag ready. Pack a bag by the door. The moment that you feel signs or contractions or something, grab the bag and go. It could happen any time now. So you're ready. All that for a delivery that might last a day or two. But for eternity, I have no idea. And the thing that we have to understand is that we have to get and earn the respect of Allah through our amal. Allah will not respect you based, like I said, on your name, or who your ajdad were, or who your father is, or who your father-in-law is, or who your spouse is. Nothing. Respect is given by what you do. We are what we do. Allama Majlisi, rahmatullah alayh, in his book Ayn al-Hayat, The Essence of Life, reports a conversation between the Holy Prophet and Jibreel. Talks about respect of our amal, right? Jibreel comes to our Holy Prophet and says, look, tomorrow I want you to do 4 things the moment you leave your house tomorrow. Is it okay? What are those 4 things? He says, tomorrow when you open your door, the first thing that you see, I want you to consume it, eat it. The second thing that you see, I want you to bury it in the ground. The third thing that you come across, I want you to assist it. The fourth thing, I want you to run away from it as far as possible. Okay? Eat it, bury it, help it, and run from it. So the Prophet says, sure. Wakes up in the morning, opens the door. The first thing that he sees is a mountain. As he approaches the mountain shrinks to a size, to the point where it becomes edible, and he consumes that mountain. The next thing that he comes across is a treasure chest, diamonds and rubies and pearls and gold and silver, the beautiful, most beautiful treasure chest. And he was asked to do what? Bury it. Good, you're following me. Bury it. He buries it. And the more he buries it, as he walks away, it pops up out of the ground. He goes back and he buries it again. It pops up out of the ground again. Because you know what? I've done what's asked of me. He moved on. He sees a bird being chased by an eagle, about to consume it. He comes flying towards the Holy Prophet. The Prophet opens his sleeve, the bird goes in, and the eagle flies away. He saves the bird. The next thing he comes across is a dead carcass of an animal. Flies and maggots and a smell and just a disgusting, disgusting image. And he does what? He runs from it. Goes back home. Now he's asking for Jibreel for the hikmah behind these 4 things. Please follow me very carefully. Jibreel says that the mountain that you consumed is your anger. The closer you get to your anger, the smaller it gets. And you literally do what? You end up eating your anger. The more you leave your anger, the bigger it gets. Sometimes we're angry, somebody upset us at work. Our boss did something, our coworker did something. We have not handled that issue properly. We come home and the wife gets it, the kid gets it, everyone gets it. Why? Because Joe upset me at work, so my bichari wife has to get it and my kids get it. And now the anger grows. And now you come here, let's say, and the dal has no namak and the dal gets it as well, let's say, for example. Why? Because you haven't addressed the anger from day number 1. If you approach the anger, you consume it, you move on, and that's it. Number 2 was the treasure chest. I'll get to that in 1 second. He says number 3 was the bird. That's very simple. You help those who need your help whenever you can. Number 4 was the carcass. The carcass represents a mahfil, a gathering where ghibat is going on. Disgusting smell, carcass, maggots, flies, insects, animals. And you do what? You run from it as much as possible. The treasure chest remains. He says the treasure chest represents your a'mal in this world. The more you attempt to bury your good a'mal, the more Allah will make them zahir in this world. No, not yet. We are kings and queens at hiding our defects. Are we not? Kings and queens at hiding our faults. We present ourselves to be perfect human beings in front of our community, and we should. Confession in Islam is haram, by the way. To my youth out there, confession in Islam is haram. Not makruh, not you shouldn't do it, it's haram. We don't believe in the idea where you go on Sundays and you sit beside a fence with holes in it, and some priest is on the other side, and you sit there and say, Father, I have sinned, please forgive me. He's more sinful than you are probably. And he's sitting there saying, okay, my son, you have been blessed, and go. And Monday you start fresh, mashallah. That we don't believe in. Why? Because confession gives himmat to the person who listens to that confession. And we search for reasons to lower our sins to ourselves, lower a'mal to ourselves. We sit there and say, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal, Maulana. Trust me, I know 10 guys that are worse than I am. That's why Imam Ali says what? That sin that is lowered in your eyes is raised in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The 4th Imam says it's not about the size of your sin, it's about who you're committing that sin against. He is buzurg and he is azim, your sin is also azim. So we're kings, masters at hiding our defects. What we need to do is spend that exact same energy and hide our good deeds as well. And hide our good amal as well. If we're sponsoring orphans in Pakistan, let's say, we're helping out some aid groups, let's say here locally, that's great. Keep it to yourself. We talked about ujb a few days ago, right? Talked about that voice that has to tell others what you do. That's our battle. But Allah promises, وَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ وَلِلْرُسُولِهِ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Izzat is in the exclusive property of Allah. Allah is the only one who's qabil izzat in this world. And He decides who else gets that izzat or not. Now, if you take that izzat in your own hands to pretend like you're going to create this false respect amongst the people, stop doing that. Rely on Allah. Say, Allah, these are my deeds. If this is qabil izzat, then that's fine. If it's not, that's fine. But the more we bury those good amal, somehow or another, Allah will make it public to those that this person did this act. Either while you're alive or while you're dead. Many times, many times. The marhum is gone, and then we realize what a great person he was. In his life, we had no idea. Because the reality is that our amal will save us from this idea of ghaflat. It will save us from this idea where we become neglectful and forgetful and we don't give it its due importance. Otherwise, what ends up happening is that we have all these great intentions. We even start that path for a couple of days, and then that path deflates itself and we go back to day number one again. And now we convince ourselves, you know what, Maulana, I tried, man. Wallahi, I tried for a week after you were gone to implement everything that you said. 7 days lasted. After that, I went back to my everyday life. Okay? Examine your amal. Introduce namaz al-ghufayla into your daily routine. And watch these anchors get cut and you begin to slowly but surely elevate. Now, how do you know that things are happening? How do you know? It's a very important question. This society is all about results, right? I'm working very hard at work. I come in early, I stay late, this and that. When it's time for promotion, do I see, is my boss noticing that? Is he recording it somewhere? I'm not doing it just for fun. I want to make sure that I get something out of it. Now, our amal is no different. We're told, like I said on Sunday, we're told, you know, fariza and natija. You do your fariza and let the natija happen by itself. Doesn't sit well with us. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is working. God forbid that I'm going the other way. There has to be signs. If I go, let's say, home from here and I'm supposed to make a right and I go left, I could be blistering down that road, just going fast as I can. I'm getting further and further away from my destination. Because somewhere I made a wrong turn. There has to be signs somewhere. But if I make a left and go the proper way, I could be crawling down the freeway. I'll eventually get to where I need to get to. I'm on the right path. How do we know if what we're doing is working? One sign. There's many, but one sign, I'm almost out of time. And to my youth, it's very, very important. In your fight against shaitan, you have to start to take notes mentally inside of you. That what caused me to sin, I was going good for a while. I had a pep talk with myself. I removed those friends of mine that were bad news. I stopped going to places that bring out the worst in me, and still I'm sinning. Why? You have to find out what is the root cause of that sin. And one of the sure ways that we can find out if what I'm doing is working is that you start to find a difference inside of you. Now you're surrounded by those same elements that usually causes you to sin. Those same elements are around you, but you have no inclination to sin whatsoever. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. In our community, in our society, with our youth, I'm sorry to say this, but drugs is a huge problem in our community. A huge problem. And our parents are completely unaware, or they choose to be unaware because they have no idea how to handle it. There are sometimes youth in that part of the world, halfway through the majlis, will go down the road, smoke some drugs, and come back in the center affected by drugs. And they think that they're fooling everybody. It's a big issue. When you ask these kids what happens, oh, you know, this guy, he brings out that in me. When I'm at this place, it brings out the worst in me. When I'm there on Friday nights, it brings out the worst in me. Now when he starts to change things around, those same guys, that same place, that same Friday night has zero effect on him. Is it possible? It's possible. Absolutely possible. Those same elements that were there to destroy you still exist, but you have changed now. You're stronger now. If that's happening, if you find yourself easily walking away from that environment that would have destroyed you yesterday, then know what you're doing is working. Know that Allah now is listening to what you're saying. And keep going. Small acts of worship, but consistent acts of worship. Every Thursday morning I walk in, I put $2 inside the sadaqah box. That's great. Any fundraising, I give $10 to every, that's fantastic. I do it quietly, I give it, that's it. That's amazing. Small acts of worship, but consistent. In summary, the one blockade that we have when it comes to the injection of Allah into our kingdom is ghaflat. Ghaflat, heedlessness, regret, neglect, is a better word. Not giving what should be important to you its due importance. It's a huge disease. Historically speaking, throughout the prophets they had this problem. Even today we have this problem. And one of the causes of the situation in our ummah today is the idea that we've allowed Allah to die inside of us because of ghaflat. Allah is there in our tongues, Allah is there, let's say, in our pockets, but Allah isn't truly inside of us. The Quran talks about cattle and those who have hearts and eyes and ears. As horrible as they are, it's nothing compared to those who are ghafil. Solutions we present today are number one, namaz al-ghufayla. I urge my youth in the audience, Google it and begin to implement it. Number two is your amal. Focus on your amal. Small but consistent. Don't attempt to gain your own respect in this dunya. Allow Allah to do that for you. The respect Allah will give is far greater than anything you and I can ever achieve in this world. Right? The treasure chest, we bury the good deeds. Allah somehow, through some wasila, will make that treasure chest known to the world again. You don't need to do all that. You do what is your faridah. Allah will take care of you. He says what? You praise me in private, I will praise you in public. Right? 1 step towards me, 10 towards you. You walk to me, I go running to you. This is who our Creator is. But the first step has to come from us, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that in this fight with shaitan, in this fight with our nafs, Allah, we ask you, we beg you to inspire us to fight this disease of ghaflat, inshallah. We ask you, Allah, to allow us to be sincere in our ibadat, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the hearts of these youth, to inject the pleasure of worship and remove the pleasure of sin, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to weaken the hands of the enemies of Islam, to strengthen the mustaza'afin all over the world. And finally, Allah, we ask you, we beg you, Allah, allow us to witness the zuhur of our Mawla and to be as ashab when he comes, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry. Jazakallah. Thank you.
السلام عليك يا عبد الله الحسين السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن ولي الله السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء السلام عليك يا ابن هدية الكبرى السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.